everyone. So today we're going to be continuing our Espeon. I had to check where I left off. And talking about that I had with the story and the characters of a clean video game, Final Fantasy VII. Rebirth has been on my mind lately, and by on my mind, I've been consuming everything I can about it for the past 3 days. I was very happy slash too puzzled to see that we have an explanation for why women like Hojo. Because, I don't think I need to explain why that was baffling. I mean, the explanation is money, which kind of makes sense, but those ladies dodged the bullet. You know, they they shouldn't be interacting with him. Speaking of ladies, one thing I encountered even the first time I was learning about this, but I noticed it more and more as I got older, is something that I don't think was entirely intentional, but is really important to me is objectification. It happens a lot in the compilation, especially, but in Final Fantasy VII, in Rebirth, you can come across the S cells, which are almost certainly just Sephiroth's skin, hair, and blood samples just walking up to him like, hey, give me your blood, give me your skin. Not even like for a doctor's appointment, just going, like, just means we can infer that people will just go up to him and be like, hey, give us the DNA so we can study it and also clone you and genetically augment people. Like, that's terrifying. Among many other things, like I don't think Shinra sees anybody as human. As we can see from Rufus telling Cloud, "Oh, you're a soldier. That means I own you. Like he's a product." And considering they created Sephiroth, I think that's probably how they see him. Hooray! We've created such a powerful ultimate weapon. Now it'll make us lots of money and destroy all our enemies. And I'm surprised when that backfires. I would say that's kind of stupid of them, but it is also accurate to real life. There are people who make decisions like this. They just don't care about them because it makes them wealthy in the meantime. Speaking of Shinra, that's what the fossil fuel industry does. We know that if we keep sucking the planet dry of its blood, then eventually disasters will happen that kill even us. Man, it means I'll be rich in the meantime. It's crazy. I've known this for years and I still have trouble wrapping my head around it. There's a lot of stuff in climate activism that I don't think you ever really get used to. You just kind of have to deal with it because it's part of the job. Speaking of objectification, or just that's another theme is violation. Like things happen to people's bodies and they didn't choose them, they didn't ask for them. Like soldiers didn't walk up to Shinra like, yeah, we'd be genetically modified into a monster. At least not as far as I know, maybe there's some random dude we haven't gotten a game about yet. But they're going like, I want to be a hero. And then you have like Zack and Cloud getting effectively kidnapped and experimented on for years. For about, you can look at Genesis, finding out that he's being slowly turned into a monster. Like it's like a literal version of dehumanization. And he doesn't stop at people volunteering to go into soldier. They'll just Hojo will just like kidnap people and modify them. I think the situation with Chadley is very sad, but I think he named Chadley. I don't think any loving parent would name their child that. I'm sorry to any Chadleys in the audience. I personally don't like that name very much. Or with Vincent, one, he gets killed. Like he is shot dead, and then even that's not enough to escape Hojo because then he's just experimenting on more. And he didn't choose for chaos and all this other stuff to get put into his body. It's just there now, and he has to deal with it. And that's really horrible, dude. thing to do to somebody. Just, oh, I want to experiment on this person. There's this force of destruction that I know is very dangerous. Let me stick it into this guy. And now he has to deal with things like maybe uncontrollably turning into a monster and having to sleep a lot, like chronic fatigue or something. I don't really expect the games to dig into this that much, but it's something that I wonder if the fandom talks about more. If I was the live stream, I too would not want Hojo reincarnating. I would say that right there is a pollutant, and I do not want to recycle that. Really like about Rifa's design, and I don't think this was intentional. I think it was just like, let's generic sexy lady is. I like that she shows so much skin. It makes her look more vulnerable, and she's someone who's very sensitive. She really cares about other people. She's like almost to a fault. She can be a people pleaser. She really cares about others' feelings, and I feel like being able to see so much of her body, like that's like getting to see the real her. Now, with a name like that, she doesn't open up about her own feelings very much, but she's really caring, sensitive. I was telling my brother once, Rufus is 30 years old. He doesn't look it. He's getting that Botox. I think a lot of people in Shinra are probably getting some kind of Botox. One thing he said was, like, even if he doesn't become physically immortal, we're never going to forget President Shinra because he's going to be like this black stain on history. And that wasn't something I thought of at all. But it's kind of like karmic to me because I don't think that's how he wants to be remembered. But now people are going to be like, "Ooh, Shimura." Hmm. And even back on objectification, that's really that's really what the soldiers seem like to me. Again, I don't think this was really planned, but Shimura doesn't seem to care about them as people. They're just like, what's the strongest weapon we can create? What's the most powerful kind of product we can make? And they just keep testing and testing. You know, if they die, you can always just go get a new one, like with rope. And you could, I wonder if you could even apply this to the rogue men because they keep walking around and they weren't created out of nothing. Let's remember, they were ordinary people just living their lives, and now they're being turned into clones, just like the soldiers are being corrupted by Genova and stuff. And I'm not sure if that was planned, but it's interesting to me because it's kind of like the cycle keeps on going. Like unless you choose to break it, like you're just going to keep acting out the things you learned as a kid or the things you saw around you. And that's probably I don't I don't know personally if we know a lot of the details here. That's the blind spot I have. But you know, being like Shinra's like poster boy, that's probably something Sephiroth saw a lot like, oh, human rights, what are those? Boundaries, what are those? Didn't you read the fine print? We're here to serve Shinra. I don't think he's ever heard of OSHA compliance. Onigurumi always looks so weird. Please sew it together. You just have a bunch of disembodied limbs. I love Vincent's name is one dramatic, Vincent Valentine too. His father's name is Grimoire. I don't think it's supposed to be funny, but it's very funny to me. If we ever meet his mom, is her name going to be like Valentina or something? And I want to believe that his name is not his birthday. Sorry, is not really October 13th. I think he just wrote that like on his application. We thought it made him look edgy. I think if we ever find out what Cloud's dad's name is, it's going to be something like Feather, just something like a normal word that you find around, or it'll be some other derivative of Cloud. Who thinks you was it named Cloud's mom, Claudia? Why did she let her son go off to join Soldier when he was 13? I just, I don't know that that was a wise decision. And if this was a game aimed at like younger kids, that's where I would go, well, he's a kid hero. Don't worry about it. But as as you can see, by the time the game starts, he's 21. The game is aimed at a somewhat older crowd. It's trying to be more mature. So that means we should be thinking more and not as spending of artist belief. So why did you let him do it? Like obviously plot. There's the plot needs to happen. But I'm really curious to see if that'll get dug into in the remake trilogy. I don't think we have any idea what the next game is going to be called because it's clearly trying to flesh out characters more. You have like Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse. They're clearly more full and nuanced characters than they were in the original. So I would love to see that applied to other characters like Cloud's mom, even if she's not a huge character. It would be fun just to learn about who she is as a person. I don't know. Does soldiers get like paid really well? I don't think it's ever been gone into. Even if they do, he's 13. So speaking of Shinra and Soldier, I'm confused by their choice of mascots. Now I understand most of their little dogs. People like Smeagol. That's a good stamp. Some people like Pugs. I understand why they would choose that as a mascot, but I just don't understand where they got the idea to pick a long-haired Chihuahua. I if I was like an evil mega corporation trying to recruit impressionable young people to my militia, I would not pick a long-haired Chihuahua. I would not like pick a Chihuahua and scribble all over it. I would pick something people already know and have positive associations with, like a golden retriever. Those are very loyal. Maybe the Chihuahuas in that world just have long hair, but it burned my eyes. Now I have to live every day this picture of a long-haired chihuahua in my mental camera roll. It makes me really angry every day. Lupertia Session. I don't understand why Vincent likes her. I don't understand why she likes Tojo. I don't understand what her motives were for getting involved with the Genova project. And by itself, like you can have like a complicated character. You can have a character where their motives aren't clear at first, and then you like learn more about them. Someone like that keeps you guessing isn't automatically bad. But what I don't like here is like the things like the love triangle does not make sense. Like if you're trying to tell me that Vincent really likes this lady, I need to know why so I can get invested in the love triangle. If you're telling me she wants to produce a child with Hojo, I need to know why. Like, was she just invested in the project? And she's like, yeah, sure, I'll be the incubator for this Genova baby. Or does she actually like Hojo? I could just not be remembering. I haven't checked in a minute. But I feel like she says something like, "Oh, I like Hojo," and that just causes me a lot of questions. I think it's pretty clear that Hojo doesn't care about anybody here. He just wants to experiment. That's that I get. That motive is very consistent for him. But if you were like, get invested in this tragic love story between the scientist and her bodyguard, why? Why should they do that? Why does he like Lucrezia so much? What's her personality like? She's particularly kind. Doesn't look like it. She's working with Hojo on genetic experimentation. Is she beautiful? Well, if she's meant to be, it's not clear. She looks like every other anime woman. Why does she like Vincent? You got to make these things clear so that your viewer can understand what's happening. I don't think I got to this earlier, but like why it bothered me so much that Vincent dies and then still gets experimented on is like even I might have said this out. Even if you unalive, like as we saw with Fauna, that won't necessarily rescue you. Like you'll keep being experimented on. Like even after you're gone, they still see you just like numbers and like an object to play around with. And that's just really gross and horrifying. I want people get to see more of Professor Gas as the remake continues. I know I'd like to see more of Lucrezia, and I would like for her to make more sense as a character because right now she kind of doesn't. I wonder if she realizes just how many problems she could have solved if she tried instead of running away and hiding in a crystal. Like, I don't know. Maybe if she intervened, she could have helped stop the project. Maybe she could have joined Avalanche and gone, Shinra, stop. Maybe she could have been some kind of positive influence to show little baby Sephiroth like killing people bad. We shouldn't have to go subjugate a country when we are 15. Like, I don't know. I don't think to be like perfect, but you can do better than just running away and hiding in a crystal. And Vincent can do better than hiding in a coffin. My dude, that's not repentant. That's not helping anybody. That's not making up for anything you did. It's, if anything, it's harming because, like he says, and I don't know if I fully agree with this, he says, like, he had many chances to stop Sephiroth, but he didn't. I don't think that has to be killing him, but yeah, he could have helped in some way. If anything would have been better than sleeping in a coffin for 30 years. Man, that's what I think he has in common with Lucrezia, avoiding his problems. But that's not enough. That's not a positive thing, and it's not enough to get me interested in their relationship. I feel like if you asked me to do an impression of a generic mad scientist, what I would come up with is Hojo's voice, also his laugh. Like I feel like if you just hear out of context, to think, "Wait, that's real. That has to be edited," but that's just how he sounds all the time. I don't think he showers. I don't think he like wears deodorant. I think he just looks like some kind of weird otter all the time. Imagine waking up from your nap and some kind of robot cat is just looking into your eyes like, "Hi, laddie, awaken." I might throw him out of the room too. This whole time, I thought there was like a clear explanation for how Ketchy works, and I was just missing it. But I was catching up on him the other day, and I was like, no. To my knowledge, it's never been explained exactly how he works. He's just here, which is almost kind of better to me. Like we don't know how this theme park mascot rides around on a Moogle, telling the future, becoming a playwright, and attacking people with musical notes. He's just here. It's kind of like cosmic horror, but fun. Think Square did a lot of research into like real climate activism when it was writing Avalanche. If they did, it would be a lot more obvious. But I'm curious to see what my fellow climate advocates have to say about it and if there's things they can relate to about it. Like, I wouldn't say, I would say most of what at least Barrett Cell does isn't something I would approve of or that like people I would work with would do. But maybe there's like other branches of it that are more like what people do every day, or especially because this game was made in the 90s, maybe things then were different than they are now. It's well, I'm not sure if it's meant to correspond to a real life location, but it was written in Japan, where I'm obviously not from, and where not everybody I know is from. But I'd be curious to see, like, in the 90s, were there people who had like similar ideas, crazy radical ideas like fossil fuels bad, and that was what inspired Avalanche. We're not going to run around like trying to shoot every fossil fuel worker, for example, because we know a lot of people are just trying to make a living and we're being forced to depend on something that is actively harming us or will unalive us in the future. That's part of the problem. It reminds me of a parasite. Both Shinra and Unova remind me of parasites. Like they're taking things away from us. Like they're making us depend on them for things like transportation very heating and cooling. But they're also perfectly aware that like they're causing or worsening lots and lots of quote unquote natural disasters. Like, sure, hurricanes existed in the world. They weren't always this bad. Where there would be hot summers, they wouldn't be this hot and they wouldn't be this frequent. They know it. Like Shinra knows that by slurping all the blood out of the planet, they're going to harm it. They just don't care because it gives them like wealth in the meantime. It's so crazy. I don't think Genova is really intelligent enough to think like a human, but I think she is sort of like a fungus, where she like attaches people and can send them information, like the mycelial mass. She can stick out like not really spores, but her cells into people, and then they become a part of her. But it's just my fucking son. One of the reasons why Barrett has so much beef towards Shinra is because it's not even just them who's mad about. He feels like it's his fault, as we see in Coral. He feels like it's his fault that they ended up the way they did, and Shinra came in and took over because he pushed for them to provide energy. And he's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to take care of his community, but obviously, Shinra involved, they don't really care about the community. They just care about the dollars, the guild. It will eventually look normal. I don't think the act of stuffing is all that. I don't think putting fiber fill into a crocheted head is all that interesting, which is why I'm not worrying about having it on screen, but I'll show you when I'm done. Like, be careful not to use it much too much because then it will look very smooth. It looks like it's full of holes. I really hope that Sid is not so terrible to Cheryl once we get to her. I haven't heard her name out loud in a while. Maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong, but you know who I mean. Like, I get that they have like this tension in their relationship, but there are better ways to portray that than just having him be a terrible husband. One day, I'll put eyes on this and it'll look like a whole head. Maybe. really like you. I wonder if it helps that I'm an older sister, so she kind of feels like a little sister to the party for a lot of people. And for me, it's like, she's trying really hard to be grown up. She, she can get kind of over the top because she wants to be taken seriously. It's like, oh, sisters did that. Where does names come from? I wonder where the name comes from. It could just be something I don't know. I just haven't heard it before. Really, I've heard people guess that Tifa's name comes from like a kind of angel, and that's something I would be curious to learn about because I haven't heard her name before either. With Earth, I know why her name is that because of the English word, but not for everybody else. People always compared Barrett doing movie Max and movie star too, and I was like, oh, I can see it. The sunglasses and the ripped vest. But recently I was listening to his voice acting. I hadn't heard it in a really long time, so I was listening to it and I was like, wait a minute. He even sounds like an 80s action movie star. He's not even from the 80s. He doesn't even have that excuse. He's from the 90s. That's how Barrett is. I wonder if I could call Red like a little brother to the group. That's how he seems to me. He gets really excited about things, but is trying really hard to be taken seriously. We can have a lot of comedy with that. Well, what's the plot of this? The plot of Remake described as Sephiroth trying out that new Game Plus run, and I had not laughed that hard in many weeks. I don't know if Genova is like intelligent enough to realize that there's like multiple timelines. I think that's definitely something he's doing on his own. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if she's influencing him in some way. Like, she's not helping, but I think he's definitely choosing to do the things that he's doing. Like, I don't think Genova was like, allow me to dissolve the veil in between timelines and merge them all together because we don't know a ton about her. But to her knowledge, she's like an alien. She came from outer space, but she didn't come from a different reality. I think it's just like, well, I all my life have been told I'm the main character, so why not be the main character, the only main character there is? When I was first getting into this game, I didn't know that Marlene was not Barrett's bio daughter. I thought they were just like regular related. And it's really, the circumstances around it are really sad, but it's really powerful to me that like he keeps looking after her. And as far as everyone is concerned, she's his daughter. And a couple of days ago, I was thinking about this and I realized like she's like 4 right now, max. So when she gets older, will she even remember dying? And I don't know why I thought of that. I made myself sad. Like when she's older, she's probably not going to remember him. She's going to remember a different guy with a gun arm who really, really cares about her. It's just a shame that the reason she's not with dying is being sad. Something else about backstory I was semi joking about with my brother is how to join the Turk. Has that ever been covered? I don't think it has. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like, how did you get in? Do you just get picked up off the street, like sadly? Do people like scout you from other places, top operatives, and they're like, "You work for us now because we said so." Because I don't think you can really leave either. I think the only way you leave is in a body bag, and it's very clear that a lot of the Turks are at least conflicted about what they're doing. That doesn't like make them good people, but it's clear that not everyone working there really wants to be. And I'm not entirely sure they have a choice in the matter. So I would be really curious, like, did they choose to start working there? Did they think like, oh, good job, good pay, and then it turned out to be way darker than they expected, or was it like, you work for us now because you said so? But I guess please, Vincent technically got out because he was in a coffin, and he's just in a unique situation. And still, I I like forget they exist every time I'm not actively looking at them. So it always throws me for a loop when I remember that there are two characters in Final Fantasy literally named Biggs and Wedge, and either 2 or 3 and 12 are both very clearly inspired by Star Wars. Like the series has been going on for so long, it can dupe Star Wars multiple times. I know Biggs and Wedge's names aren't copyrighted, but it's a little bit funny to me. Like, hey, how did no one get called out for this? So Jesse Raspberry did that. Not terrible, a very normal word. Like Rose puts you out of the room. He's very clearly angry, but he's not being like super obvious about it. I don't think this has been clearly explained yet. I'm pretty sure it's still subtext, but I wonder if the path that the remake will take is that he doesn't really choose to transform. It just happens when he gets angry. And if that's the case, maybe you'll have to connect that into him like learning to manage his emotions and stuff. And I don't know. Anything is better than avoiding them. I've read fanfics where people like go to see Lucrezia and they like get her out of crystal. have to catch up on modern technology. He has to help them with like science stuff because he is very, very smart. You could do something with that. And obviously, like fans can't exactly predict how the games are going to go. But I would be really curious if the remake does something kind of like this because I feel like you can do a lot more with her. You can make her make a lot more sense. You can make story use of her. And so far, it's been interested in fleshing out the characters and making sure everybody gets time to shine, making sure everybody moves the plot forward. So I hope something like that happens. The series are going to look so cute when they're done. I refuse to call Scarlett a hag. Just we seem old to her. Maybe when you're 16, like a 30-year-old looks really old, but she's not unless she's doing Botox too. Like she's clearly an adult, but not old. I remember some old concept art I saw of Vincent where he had white hair, and you'd have to change his whole color scheme to make it work well. But I really liked it. I thought it looked really cool. I think black was probably chosen because it helps show that he's like brooding, he's mysterious. But the color scheme was like gold, white, and red. That's really cool. It could be fun to use even for a different character. Kind of surprised he wasn't a poet with a name like Vincent Valentine, bad luck and love. Maybe he would have been if he hadn't become a Turk. What are they called that anyway? It has nothing to do with turkey. Wherever Cloud walks, he fumbles. He has two girls interested in him, trying to show off their bikini, and he fumbles. But at the same time, wherever he walks, people fall in love with him, and that is endlessly funny to me. Like I don't know why Rufus Shinra would be saying things like "Got my number yet?" But here he is. I don't know why Rose decided he was so cool to follow him around with a bike like some kind of weird stalker with a mullet. Like here he is. I don't think he's noticed. I wonder why the Shinra Super's helmets are designed like that. They almost look like they have three eyes. Slightly unsettling. For a little while, I spent some time trying to figure out, like, why is it the seventh infantry company or whatever it is? Why is the seventh head in the bar? Is there some kind of theme around the number seven? And I remembered it's the seventh Final Fantasy game. I felt silly. Speaking of violation, all my life I wondered, how come little Tifa dresses like a cowgirl? Then I saw that her father is a cowboy, and I was like, oh, it runs in the family. Maybe that's why they live out in the country. It also concerns me greatly that the Loveless play, which we see in Rebirth, is called the Genie Edition, which there's only one character I can think of with connection to Loveless whose name begins with Genie. And if he wrote it, that would explain a lot, like why it's so melodramatic and not good. But like, does that mean we're going to see him? I don't know what I'm going to do if my favorite genetically augmented theater kid shows up again. Who they had Jack come in and do mocap for, which is crazy. Are they going to call him in again? He's too older now. His love is like public domain at this point. Why is the main girl in this named Rosa? Is she named after Rosa from Final Fantasy IV? Who knows? You know how Genova was planning to merge with the planet reminds me of something Parasite might do. He was gonna merge with the planet and use it like a ship to travel to space, right? And to my knowledge, there's no fungus, like single fungus, big enough to do that to the entire planet. But there are mushrooms that can take over the minds of insects. And then they ride around in the insects or even in the insect shells. And they can effectively, like, they can hijack their brains. Like, and again, I'm not sure how intentional all this was, but it's weird to take it that the planet has some kind of consciousness in this universe, which is how a lot of characters treat it. Then Genova would be doing that. She would be taking over and piloting around the planet, like how the cordyceps does to cicada. Yeah, I've heard for why she looks the way she does when you encounter her with like a human head. The rest of her body is a mismatch is that she was in the middle of transforming when she was captured, and that's a really interesting idea to me. Like maybe she was trying to look like a human, and she didn't quite get it. I understand that with multiverse stuff, it can get overwhelming, but so far it's not bothering you. I wonder if the name comes from somewhere because it looks almost like a regular last name, but I haven't heard it. And there's undoubtedly a lot of last names I don't know, but it also doesn't have like a lot of similar roots to names that I do know. I wonder if it's there to mean something, like Eric's name. I don't think this was planned either. I think it was just like, hey, what would be some fun character contests? So it's really funny to me that out to save the world among all these other various types of creature and human, two of them end up being some kind of supernatural cat. Like one of them is like a lion with its tail on fire, and the other one is some kind of robot golem that no one really knows how it works or why. Like, sure, there's tons of humans, but they all have very different occupations. I wonder if Lucretia will get some kind of redesign. I'd like if she wore her actual scientist clothes, her lab coat. I don't think she needs it that much. I think she's mostly fine, but I'd like to see her look a little more unique. What can her design tell us about her? Right now it's not saying much. It's interesting to me, like it makes total sense from a story standpoint, but it's interesting to me that none of the Turks use their real names, they use code names. And I would really like to see if we'll ever find out their real names at some point. Like, can that tell us something about where they're from? If they're like this family here that has this last name, if they're like this language that uses these similar sounds. And I wouldn't want that to happen out of nowhere. I would want it to make sense, but that could be fun to dig into. I really like some of the little touches, like Elena's gun is bright pink with a little heart on it. It looks super cute, and that helps show that although she's very serious about her job, She's also like young and really girly. You don't you don't have to do like a huge overhaul for all of them, but it would be fun to dig more into them. And that's actually something I kind of like about them all wearing the same outfit is it's almost like a blank slate. And then how they customize like their hair or their weapons like Alina does, that tells you a little bit about who they are and that helps you remember them. How do you get your nickname? Like, did they nickname him Rude out of irony? How did Elena get the very normal name Elena? Did they just reach into a hat and pick out letters? Or just his name, her name? Was somebody looking at like it says in a plane? Oh, perfect. One ear dye. Now we can work in your ear. Hmm. So whose idea was it? Was to send the Turk to go kill God? What did you think was going to happen? I guess I know they're not strictly called gods, but did you think you weren't going to lose 90% of them? Or did they just not care? You know, they can always go get more. I made a joke once that they're clones too, like wherever you go, like you destroy one turret and then you turn around and two more pop up. I don't think they are, but that would be very funny. I don't think Deep Ground has been followed up on yet either. And that doesn't have to be like a right now thing. It's not urgent in the story. But, you know, if not now, when? They're just hanging out in the background with their amazing names. When are they going to show up? Are they going to crash the party like Red crashing the Yu-Gi-Oh tournament? If so, why? And how? I wonder if their names are like silly on purpose, but that doesn't really match with the tone they have to me. They're clearly very scary and dangerous. I don't know, maybe it's supposed to feel like a team. To be honest, I don't think those ladies needed Cloud and Eris to go on a date to get inspiration for their pieces of fashion. That seems very convoluted to me. I think the creators just really wanted to have this scenario happen, and this is just like, how do we put it in? And by itself, it doesn't really bother me because it's good character stuff and it's very funny. But it makes me wonder if, like, in universe, those ladies were like, "Man, you want to see this guy fumble more? It's very entertaining. Who I know, let's tell him he can inspire us." I wonder if Cloud has ever been to a beach before in his life because it doesn't look like it. He looks so pale. He looks like he hasn't been outside for 5 years. Wait, I feel like if he steps into the sun, it'll like burn him and he'll start hissing like a vampire. Maybe vintage get some sun. Like let him sleep, just like put him in the sunshine and let him sleep there like a cat, and maybe that'll like help improve his mood. Recently, I knew what the gold saucer was, but I hadn't seen a picture of it, or if I did, it was a very long time ago. So it was silly me. I thought it was like a normal theme park, and it was probably gold, and maybe also shaped like a saucer because it's in the moon. But then I looked at it, and it's like a dignified skyscraper. Like that's how I knew we were really in cyberpunk. It looks so overwhelming. There's like fireworks, there's VR, there's rides, crazy. Imagine being able to sleep through all of that. So, you Once I was explaining Soldier to my brother, for some reason he knew how the perks worked, but he didn't know Soldier. So I was explaining how they all work for Shinra, and he was like, "I don't think I've ever heard of a mega corporation that has its own militia, except maybe the Amazon." I said, "Don't give him any idea." have weapons almost like the planet's immune system, like they protect it from harm. That's really interesting to me. I wonder if other theories have done that. It's not something I've seen a lot before. I wonder if I could mark that. I remember first learning about how Rufus Shinra exists, and not only him, but two half siblings, one of which he works with. And I was like, man, and I've been having to explain that to your coworker, like, yeah, sorry. Unfortunately, we're related. Um, you have the DNA of this man. I would be like, man, how did he ever get married? Who's up with this man? Then he realized he has that money. And I think that's the only reason. There's some kind of like evil empress out there. I don't think she's doing much. That Rufus's name means like red hair because before he certainly did have red hair. But now it's just kind of blonde. Maybe he dyes it. Makes the little thingies Espeon has on the sides of his head. I really love just the amount of emotion this game. I was watching Rebirth recently, which is why it's been on my mind. I love this, the amount of emotion just being able to pull out of people. Like, it's obviously very painful, but having to play as Eris as she's walking around asking for help, like, please help my mom, we need a doctor. Like, that forces you to really be in his shoes and feel how she's feeling. And I want to be able to make with my own stories. I want people to be able to experience those kinds of emotions. I don't know enough about voice acting to do it like professionally, but I also love Cooper's voice as Piggy Seaman. I want to spell it Dakota's name would be translated as Heretic Dakota this time around. That would complete the biblical symbolism. I call him a heretic. Even outside of like religion, just the things he does go against basic goodness. Um, well, then the lower part doesn't be your top. I get that as a order. Another thing that really gets me about Elmira is all this was in the open, like on a crowded street. She's lying there, clearly in pain, clearly ill. And there's this little kid running around saying, "Hey, I need help. Can you bring me a doctor?" And people like they laugh at her or they ignore her. And that hits. That happens in real life. I don't know about you, but I would personally not name a plane the tiny Bronco. It's not tiny, and it's also not a Bronco. It's weird. He has good clothes, though. He looks really stylish. I remember when I first saw him, I was like, "Oh man!" In Rebirth, it doesn't look half as good in the original. I was like, "Oh man, is it time to let the feminism leave my body? Will he be a good husband this time?" I remember when I first showed him to my brother, his reaction was, "Wow, he actually looks his age," which should tell you something. He doesn't even have the excuse of being trapped in a coffin for 30 years. He just looks weird. I'll get to see the other sector at some point. I wouldn't say it's a have to, but it's something I'd really like to know more about. What were they like as a people, not just as like a story? I remember when I first saw Boop and Hugging too. All I knew about him was that he had a connection with Red 13. So being unknowing, I thought that maybe he was also a cat. And then I looked at him and I was like, he's a what? What's he doing there? Who even knows? Mm, I'm not aware. Okay. Red 13, he's really good at changing his voice, like Sleepy Jokie levels. I could not walk around talking in my normal voice and then go like, oh, by the way, we're approaching Argo Bay and I'm so tough and rugged and make it sound like convincing, like he can. Maybe that's what he practices in his spare time. It's interesting to see that people really like to read. That's another thing where I wouldn't say it's a have to. It's not urgent, but it's something I'd like to see dug into more eventually. Like she likes doing martial arts, but she doesn't necessarily want to have to go around like punching monsters. She wants to have a calm, chill life where she can read big mood. Well, I don't do martial arts, but I too would like to just relax and read. Maybe Cloud was never a reader. Those little things that go on the side of Espeon's head. I forgot to leave a tail for sewing, but I guess I'll just reattach things, and that should be it for today.